Welcome to another edition of Indian Times with Kevin and Leo, and I am Leo.
I'm Kevin.
And we're here today on this beautiful January 20th to tell you about what's going on in Native country.
Sounds good.
Sounds good? I got a good one.
Yeah.
Let's start on a high note.
Good.
So today was the Women's March all over the United States of America. I guess it's ups and downs because the Women's March was great because, it's given voice to so many people in a patriarchal, misogynist culture that we have here. And it was pretty good. I had a great time. I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska, and there was hundreds of people who showed up for the march downtown here, and I saw some pictures of some of the other places around America that were doing these marches as well. And I mean, there was thousands of people who showed up to these marches all over in these different cities. It was amazing. One thing that kind of caught me off guard was there was a Native woman, and she spoke about the Native women having the highest rate of kidnap, rape, and murder in America. And what I noticed was when I was looking around the crowd that there was a lot of bewilderment in the crowd. Like a lot of people had never heard that before, which is kind of sad. But at the same time, it's awesome that exposure is getting out there with something like this. This is the perfect platform for speaking up about what's happening in Native country.
Yeah, well, it's great that somebody brought that up. It's not something that too many people, I think, realize. There was that movie recently, Wind River. I don't know if you got to see that, but it was a really excellent story about a young woman who was attacked near one of these man camps, and she tries to escape and doesn't make it. But I probably gave away too much of the plot for you if you haven't seen it. I apologize for that.
I think that's like the opening credits anyway. So
pretty much, yeah.
That's not giving away the plot yet. That's just basically telling them what happens in the beginning, and it's all in the previews anyway. So that's not really much of a spoiler alert. There's still a lot to that movie, but if you haven't seen it, you should get out and rent the movie, the DVD, Wind River. So it's an amazing movie. It was actually connected to Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, it was.
And
he was the producer.
Yeah, they cut him out of it. So I thought that was awesome, man.
Yeah, pretty interesting story. I mean, the writer and director, boy, whose name is escaping me right now. Once the whole Harvey Weinstein scandal broke, he approached Weinstein's company and she said, you gotta detach yourself from this movie right away. It's really a terrible irony that Harvey Weinstein is being accused of sexual assault, is funding a movie and producing a movie about sexual assault.
Yeah.
Luckily, the Weinstein company agreed and detached themselves and decided to give the profits from that movie that would have gone to Harvey Weinstein and his company to an Indigenous Women's Council.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's good.
And for him to be an accused sexual predator, that's really crappy. But the fact that people are holding him and people like him accountable is pretty amazing in today's society. And what affects our women, our Native women in our society, I mean our women in general, it also affects Natives, because that equality that happens just like with the Black Americans and the Civil Rights Movement. When that movement was happening and a lot of the Black Americans were being persecuted in the 60s, 50s and 60s, that actually affected Natives as well, And so in the 70s, a lot of things changed, and at the end of the 70s, 1978, the Native religion became legal. Before that, it was illegal, and people were underground because they were avoiding persecution, legal persecution because of it. So, even with women's rights and the Me Too movement and all these different women leaders that are stepping up and, fighting for equality, it's going to affect everyone, not just women, but it's going to affect Native men as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to write a story recently for Indians.com, which is affiliated with this podcast. and it was about the sexual harassment issue, the Me Too campaign, and kind of its impact in Indian country. And one of the interesting things I discovered was that this issue affects a lot of tribal governments in a very interesting and sad way, which is that most tribal governments in America are run by men. You know, just like most local and state governments are also run by men. But actually, in tribal governments, it's even more pronounced. You know, there are a lot of tribal councils in America that are run completely by men, or maybe have one woman or two women at the most. Now, this creates, unfortunately, you know, kind of oftentimes a culture of what's the word? Just misogyny. Just a lot of really ugly behavior toward women. I interviewed two different council women, one for the Navajo Nation and one for the Muskogee Creek Nation, both who have alleged that their fellow councilmen had groped them, and that nothing was being done, even though they've gone public with these accusations. And there was little, oftentimes, that you could do, because in a lot of tribes, there's just not the kind of legal system in place to either make these kind of crimes illegal, and even if there are laws in place that criminalize these kinds of activities like groping, like you know, inappropriate sexual advances, there aren't laws that then set up punishment for that
to
kind
make
of
them
activity.
accountable for their actions. So.
And then even if, like in the Navajo Nation, there actually are some pretty comprehensive set of laws to try to prevent, you know, sexual assault and harassment. But what they find there is that there aren't the services for the offenders. You know, once somebody's actually accused and convicted of one of these crimes, they don't have oftentimes the services to rehabilitate them. You know, the treatment programs, the mental health practitioners in place to really try to treat these men. And so oftentimes judges are just kind of hamstrung. I mean, you know, either at that point, I guess, you either just lock somebody away, which I don't think is rehabilitation most of the time, or you just set them free or give them community service. So it's it's a really unfortunate thing, and it affects Indian country in a very pronounced way. A lot of work needs to be done on that within tribal governments, for sure.
What do you think about castration?
What do I think about it in general? I think it's
like, do you think if you
bad?
Think if you cut off the testicles, someone who's a sexual predator, do you think that would basically deter them from sex crimes in the future, or those urges? I mean, okay.
Yeah.
For instance, like,
if you cut off somebody's arms and legs, then it also deters them from
stealing,
various kinds of crimes. Yeah, from stealing, from jaywalking. You know,
people's booty.
break people's ankles
You
if
ain't
they
slapping
jaywalk.
nobody's booty if I cut your arms off. Punk. No, but I mean, they do it to dogs. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you.
I've seen a lot
I do.
of dogs that hump a lot, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden they go and get them neutered, and next thing you know, they're like just so peaceful and nice and kind.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, it's unfortunate that it doesn't seem like certain individuals in our society can be rehabilitated, and I think that maybe that's what your question is getting to, is what do you do with people who can't be rehabilitated, who can't be fixed? I don't know. I guess I'm hesitant to say castration, but I hear you. I do.
Is castration okay? I know neutering is for dogs, but that's the testicles. Is castration the testicles, or is that everything?
Everything.
Oh, no,
from what I understand.
No. They can keep they can keep the main part, but that's if they don't have a second offense.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Like, you're not right in the tribal codes.
And
Not that I'd have any fear
and then
of getting busted for something like this, but
and what if somebody's falsely accused? You know, because there's a lot of dysfunctional natives. There's a lot of dysfunctional Native men, but there's also a lot of dysfunctional Native women who might be vindictive. Because I've met a few jealous Native women, and they might get vindictive and try to call somebody on something that's not true just to get them neutered. You know, just because they left them. You know, you left me for such and such. You know, you left me for Sheena, so now I'm gonna go ahead and report you. And guess what? Next thing you know, you're not gonna have any.
Jeez. Flashback or
Not gonna have any
what?
testicles when I'm done with you.
Post-traumatic stress disorder coming out here.
Just shot, Leo. Wait till I report you and you're gonna have them
Alright,
come
it's
chop you off.
okay. It's
Man,
over.
chop your
You're
manhood
okay now.
off.
You're safe. You're in a safe place. This is
Yeah.
where the healing begins.
Honestly, though, I don't know if that's a bad scenario though. For I don't like predators, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sad. It's sad that we have to live in a culture, in a country, in a world that we have to deal with that type of stuff, and that we have to not only watch and worry about the women that we care for, but also, you know, like have to try to hold men accountable for their actions when they can't control themselves, and I don't understand why that happens, but it's pretty crappy, you know. It's everything gets in these cycles, you know. It's like with the alcoholism.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people who are listening to this know that we're in the Midwest. So, Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, Pine Ridge Native Reservation, had a plague for 100 years of this little alcohol town called White Clay, Nebraska, that was 2 miles away from Pine Ridge, just across the border. And they shut down all the liquor stores. But they're still fighting. There's still a bunch of stuff going on. Like the liquor store owners were found guilty of a bunch of liquor violations. So that's why they were able to shut the liquor stores down. But also they were fined for it. And so now they're actually appealing that. So that's still in progress. But what had happened too is bootleggers have shot way up in Pine Ridge. So there's a big push to try to stop that as well, because they're cutting alcohol with all kind of crazy chemicals just to try to stretch it, to try to make a little bit of extra money. And people who are addicted to alcohol, they're drinking that, not really paying attention to what they're guzzling. The next thing you know, their livers can shut down, or what kidneys can shut down, or whatever can happen, and we can have a lot of deaths coming out of this. But the police force in Pine Ridge is actually short-handed. I think they have, what was it? Let's say 32? Yeah, they have 32 officers, but they had 6 new recruits who are probably active duty now. But so that brings them up to 38, but they have a budget for 44 police officers, and this is for, what was it? I think it was 2 million acres, Pine Ridge, their jurisdiction.
Yeah, about the size of Connecticut.
So, yeah, so they're shorthanded and they're dealing with bootleggers. Well, Nebraska is also pushing to try to stop this bootlegging epidemic that's popped up since White Clay shut down. So they're trying to pressure liquor stores in the surrounding towns in White Clay, surrounding towns of White Clay, or Pine Ridge, Pine Ridge. And what they're doing is they're pushing these liquor store owners to try to be more accountable for like red flags that somebody's a bootlegger. Like, okay, you come in there and you buy a case of vodka every 3 days. They're going to flag you as being someone who's selling vodka instead of just buying it for your own consumption. Or if you go in there and you buy 20 cases of beer every few days, they're going to be flagging you. And they're trying to get the state patrol to get involved, but the state patrol had been saying for a long time that this is a BIA, this is FBI, and this is a tribal police problem. But now the government of Nebraska is pushing them to try to pressure them to actually do their job a little bit more. And so me and Kevin were having a debate about that off camera earlier, because Kevin was trying to say that I was going to be thinking that they should be a little bit more lenient on the police, but I'm glad they're doing it.
I mean, you're always about that, right?
Well, you know what?
Pro police.
Well, I'm not pro police. What I am is I'm pro us as natives, getting involved in the system more. Like,
Yeah.
I would love it if there was a bunch more Native police, even in Lincoln, because,
Yeah.
but you know, you're going to get persecuted for it, because the culture is, you know, anti-cop. If you report somebody, you're a snitch. I was just on Facebook and I was seeing somebody talking about, oh yeah, this woman's on meth and she's pregnant. You know, should I report her? And people were like, yeah, you should report her. And she's afraid that she's going to be labeled as a snitch and get retaliated on because of it. And that's sad, because that's going to be another Native baby that's going to pop out, already addicted to drugs, already probably having some kind of developmental issues, you know, and that's part of our community. And yeah, that woman's suffering, and yeah, she's going to have legal trouble if you report her, but you know, you also have a baby's life that is in your hands whenever you know something like that's happening. So, you know, I don't think people should do crimes. I don't think we should go out and rob banks, or we should go out and rob your friends or whatever. And if you do a robbery with your buddy and you go set him up and tell on him, you know, that's dishonorable. Yeah, you're a snitch. But you shouldn't be doing crimes in the first place. And we should get to where we can live a successful, productive life, you know. I actually have, you know, a criminal history. I have stuff that I did before I became sober, but I've never told on anybody. But I've never been put in a situation to where I've seen someone hurting a baby, or I've known of a rapist or a molester. You know, because if I did, I would try to intervene. I would do my best to intervene in that, and that's a sad reality in some people's lives, and that's happening. You know.
Yeah.
But with these police and with the reservation, yeah, I want them to start to make it difficult for bootleggers to sell alcohol with poison in it, because
I mean, you got to do something. It's
Yeah.
actually just lost a cousin to liver failure. He was I think he was 32, and you know, you hear about that all the time. And it's something that you don't hear about in Lincoln, Nebraska, is 32-year-olds dropping dead of liver failure. But it's so commonplace on the reservation. In fact, I've heard of 20-some-year-olds, you know, who've died of liver failure. It's just incredible the amount of alcohol that people are going through in that place, and how easy and accessible it is. I mean, I had a cousin who was a bootlegger, and you know, he wasn't a bad person. In fact, he'd been a tribal cop for a while. But, you know, he lost his job, and it's a fact of life that, you know, you have this whole underground sort of, a bootlegging sort of business. I mean, it's a black market, and people make a lot of money on it, and it's easy money. You know, all you have to do is drive in town and pick up a case of vodka, you know, distributed into, now here I am telling people how to do it.
Hey, man, I think you could be held liable for this, for real. I can't believe you're giving them like
Here's
all
a
your
chart.
secrets. Yeah, all your trade secrets.
Here's what you call.
Yeah.
No, I won't go too far into it, but it's just so
you
easy.
get a green light,
Yeah.
you put it out on your porch, and you turn it on when you're good.
Jeez, I didn't know that much.
When I was in high
Speaking
school,
experience
when
here.
I was in high school, I knew this guy sold weed, right?
Yeah.
And he had a green light. And I told him, I said,
Really?
dude, that's the stupidest thing I've ever
Yeah,
seen in
everybody's
my
gonna drive by.
entire life. I said, as soon as the police find out, they know when to come and get you. And he's like, oh yeah, you're right, huh? It's like, dumb, you're a dummy. You're a dummy, dude.
But you know, the profits are incredible. You're not going to make that kind of money doing, you know, working at a gas station or doing, you know, slinging burgers at McDonald's. So.
Yeah, but the bigger picture is, you're destroying yourself, you're destroying your loved ones, you're destroying everybody else around you, you know?
Yeah.
You know,
But aren't you just giving them what they want or they're going to get anyway, right?
well,
That's the
I mean,
argument.
you can give them poison too, you know? If you know somebody who's suicidal, you know, are you going to be trying to save them, or are you going to hand them a pistol?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the same thing, it's just a little bit
Mhm.
slower. And to me, like, we have to start healing, and we have to start like becoming healthy, because we're getting like the planet. I think natives are basically connected to the planet so much that what happens to the planet is happening to us, you know? It's like this planet is falling apart and this planet is becoming broken and toxic. And what I see happening with the reservation, with the alcoholism and with the drug epidemics and with the contaminated water and with the kidnapping and rape and murder of Native women, the epidemics of all this happening, it feels like a mirror to what actually is happening to the actual planet itself. It's sad, and I want to fight that. Like, I don't feel like we're defeated, you know. And so that's why I've been doing a lot of stuff I've been doing, and that's why once my brain cleared up, and I'm gonna tell you, it took about 3 years. When I got sober in 2009, it took me about 3 years until I felt normal. And you don't know it, you don't realize it until like later on down the road you reflect back and you go, oh yeah man, I start thinking a lot more clearly, you know, towards 2011, you know, 2012. And you know, now I'm making efforts to try to be to not only be sober but try to heal some of the stuff that I was caught up in the cycle with, but also, you know, that I see my family and my loved ones and people that, you know, are in our nation doing as well, you know. That's why I'm happy to see that Ho Chunk is doing the sustainable foods. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a really cool project that the Winnebago tribe is doing. It's actually a coalition between the Winnebago tribe, Ho Chunk Incorporated, and the Winnebago Community Development Corporation. Actually, I think it's Ho Chunk Community Development Corporation. It's kind of a nonprofit that's affiliated with the tribe. So the whole idea is called Ho Chunk Harvest, and the whole idea is to try to get the tribe to a place where it can provide for itself. It grows its own food. It's completely independent, you know, of any sort of outside food source, you know, for a variety of reasons. I mean, there is some valid fear that someday it may not be possible for the tribe to import its food from the outside for a whole variety of reasons. So they want to be able to grow that. They started a corporation called Ho Chunk Farms. Part of the role of Ho Chunk Farms is to buy back land. And maybe not buy back land. I think that's actually a function of a different agency. But their job is to turn some of these lands that have been bought back by the tribe into farms to
awesome.
grow food for the tribe. So. But this Ho Chunk Harvest, the big part of it is they want to build an indoor farmers market. This will be about a 4,400 square foot, 3-season building within Winnebago Village. It's kind of on the north part of the community. And I have enough space there for about 10 different vendors, people who can come in. A lot of times during the summertime, if you drive through Winnebago, you'll see a lot of these, you know, little kind of mom and pop type little vendors set up along the road, the highway there especially. Highway 77, and they sell everything from sweet corn to jewelry to native arts and crafts, popcorn even, and so it's really kind of popular thing to see and do, you know, during the summer there, and they want to harness that, put them in this indoor farmers market that's really kind of cool looking, that'll draw people from around the whole area, and it puts all the vendors in one spot, makes them very accessible, but also, you know, obviously gives the vendors themselves access to customers who can all come and, you know, visit them all in one place, so it's good for them too. Another part of this is that the tribe's going to be installing 60 of these raised garden beds in various you know, homes across the reservation to try to encourage some home gardening. People, you know, hopefully they can start growing their own fruits and vegetables. Well, probably vegetables. I don't know. They can grow too many fruits in Nebraska.
You know if you know if they're organic. Are they planning on doing organic?
They do plan on doing organic, yeah.
Okay,
and one of the things they want to do is they want to give out some loans to people who want to start small businesses related to food there on the reservation. And they actually got some funding from the Nebraska Department of Economic Development to do that. So I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah, and there are fruit trees that that survive here in this climate.
Oh yeah, I guess we got apples and
Yeah, so that's good. They'll be able to hook it up. I would love to do a food forest someday.
Yeah,
So
tell
that's
me about
actually
that. What is a food forest?
Well, a food forest is basically you go into an area and you research what the historic sources of food were in that area, like plum bushes or choke cherries or different kind of nuts or tinsula or other kind of turnips or and it doesn't have to just be specifically to that specific region, but in that area. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you just kind of condense it into that area, and you just start planting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to have a ecological effect. It's going to have a boom that's going to bring not just that food into that forest, where if somebody wanted to walk through and pick a bunch of plums, they could, but also there's going to be more animals that start showing up because of that. So they'll be able to sustain and flourish, and then you'll see more animals start to come back into an area.
Yeah.
So it affects all animals. So you'll see coyotes. I mean, if we had wolves in the area, they would come. If you had mountain lions in the area, they would come, which people really don't want, but they're part of the ecosystem. But what happens is, you know, they bring more insects. They bring more birds. They bring more rodents. They bring more
Bums, probably, right?
Small mammals. What are bums? If this is on the reservation area, there's no such thing as a bum.
Okay.
They're all our people. They're all our oyate. But yeah, I mean, if people go out there and they want to live and they want to eat, you know, I think it'd be fine with me. So
I guess.
But yeah, I think we should. I think besides them having agriculture areas, I think they should be spreading some plants through that area that are edible. You know.
Yeah.
I think that would be amazing as well. I'd love to do that
Mm-hmm.
back in Pine Ridge eventually, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. I'm glad they're doing organic too, because there's been two different incidences of vandalism of huge beehives, like 2 million bees.
They actually just busted some boys for that.
Yeah.
Like a 12 and a 13-year-old.
Yeah, but that was only one. There was another one, I think, in California that happened.
They haven't found anybody for that. That was
Yeah.
the one in Iowa. They finally found out who did that. Just some kids just randomly decided to upend, what was it, like 500,000 bees or something crazy like that. You know, tip all these hives over and subject all these bees to the cold and freezing air, and they died immediately, of course. It's going to cost the people who own this place about $60,000. Luckily, they've been able to generate about half of that through GoFundMe.
Oh yeah.
So that's
Yeah. I mean, besides what they lost financially, it's the effect that it has on the environment. You know, killing off that many bees at one time. It's counterproductive to what's happening with all the factories that are pumping in toxic air and toxic water and toxic.
So speaking of organic, what is this thing you tried to feed me before you went on the air here? I wanted to tell me again what it doesn't have.
Well, it doesn't. Okay, and I have some amazing friends.
Yeah.
And I have this beautiful friend who she used to actually own a bakery.
Yeah.
And so she's very health conscious, and she came over, and because I'm trying to eat healthy, I'm trying to basically fight off a sickness, and so she came over and she made me some desserts that had no sugar in it, no flour in it, no eggs in it. And I offered it to Kevin.
And it's a dessert? It's actually a dessert?
And I offered.
Can you call that a dessert? That sounds like a meal. That sounds like really
okay,
bad.
so it has dates in it. Dates are really sweet.
I guess.
Okay, so you put dates in it. You put crushed almonds in it.
I think we should taste test this for everybody. Why don't you go get some? We'll try
shea
it.
butter.
Seriously.
I'll get some.
Come on.
You want me to go
Yeah,
get some?
let's do it.
I'll go get some. All right, I'll be right back, guys.
Oh, I can't wait. This ought to be good. Well, thank you again for joining us. We have a lot of fun doing this, and hope that you have fun listening to us. So, if you get a chance, please leave some comments and maybe hit like on the video once we get this on YouTube. Here we go. All right.
So sometimes if you get sick, you don't have to just rely on doctors to heal you. Sometimes you can go ahead and look and research. I mean, with YouTube and with all the people that are into alternative medicines nowadays, you can actually heal yourself without paying a lot of money by just changing up your diet. You know, and that goes for some really serious illnesses too. So, but okay. So you see these two testicle? I mean,
Haitian mud balls.
these two balls here. This one here is like a half of one, so I'll let you take a piece off of that.
Yeah, it looks like that spirit food you get, you know, at like Sundances and stuff.
Yeah,
What do they call that?
Man,
Is it wasna? Or
wasna, yeah.
Wasna, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, it's like that's wasna.
Sounds like wasna, huh? It tastes kind of like it too a little bit,
It does, doesn't it?
Now that you said that.
I'm gonna have to drink something with it. I can't even get it down. It's like, there, that's better.
That makes it better, huh?
Yeah.
When you wash it down a
Just
little
dip
bit.
it in this tea here and no, we're going.
I'll make you a dozen of them and then send them home with you. Man, sweet, now you have me eat that now. My jaws are sticking together and I can't talk. I'm gonna start laughing and shooting food at the camera. Okay. Let's get back to some
All
more.
right, let's get serious.
So we're talking about healthy,
Yes.
right? Well, you know what's not healthy?
What?
Uranium mines. And you know why uranium mines aren't healthy? Because they use water. And they use water to do the mining, right? Well, this water becomes radioactive. I guess what they do with that water, they're supposed to dispose of it. But how do you dispose of it really, you know? So what happens? A bunch of it spills back into the water system and gets and then people's residents' waters get contaminated. Animals' water gets contaminated and people start getting sick, right? Okay. Well, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has given public until January 29 to comment on its staff decision to let Crow Butte Resource Incorporated uranium mine 50 miles away from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. They decided no environmental impact statement study is necessary to mine uranium. This is for a Canadian uranium giant. How did you say it before? Cameco Corp. So I don't know if you heard this, but there was a documentary a while back, and it was talking about how uranium contamination in Pine Ridge Reservation has been linked to high rates of birth defects and stillbirths. So I'm personally trying to get back to Pine Ridge. I live in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is, what, 300 miles away?
Yep.
300 miles away, but I'm trying to get to White Clay because I want to start up a TP company there, a manufacturing company there. I've already actually started the manufacturing company, but I want to base it out of there because that place was such a hellhole, such a disparity on our people, such a plague, that I believe it fed into the despair that feeds alcoholism and all the other abuses and suicides. And so we need to put something in place of it that can bring some hope. You know, this ain't gonna solve everybody's problems, but it can be a little pebble in the pond that could cause a ripple effect, and that's what I'm thinking. But at the same time, I'm like, man, so there's uranium contamination in the water in Pine Ridge. That's where all my relatives are, my extended relatives, and you know, I'm just thinking like, how can we solve this problem next? Like, you know, the genocide, when is it going to end? When we end? Because it seems like they're still trying to kill us off.
No.
If you ask my opinion on it. So, and you know, Trump is like deregulating everything. Not just him, but his administration. And they're, you know, Robert Mueller is trying to get him and he's working fast, but I don't know if he's working fast enough before they put all this in place. But maybe once he's gone, they'll be able to just overturn everything that he did. You know, they've even linked Trump to to the Italian mafia, to the Russian mafia, and to the Russian government, and they have money ties linking all of them together with Trump, with his business dealings, and also with paying off right before his right before he was elected, paying off a porn star. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and they're running
That's
that
our guy.
down. Yeah, they're running that down the line too, trying to you know, catch him with a smoking gun, but it's
Well, they keep catching him with a smoking gun. I mean, it doesn't matter. You know, his base, they'll forgive him for anything. In fact,
the
he said,
Republican majority,
I could shoot somebody in the middle of the street and I wouldn't be held accountable.
the Republican majority is protecting him right now, but the Republican majority is about to go up for votes, midterm elections here in 2018.
Yeah, they'll distance themselves for a while, but they'll be right back in his corner once it's all
Well,
said and done.
I mean, if they don't have the majority anymore, because look at how many people are paying attention to the politics now, and he has a 30%. I don't know if it's exactly 30%, but it's in the 30s.
Yeah,
Approval rating. That's the lowest in history.
yeah.
So, you know, his Republican base, I think they're in for a rude awakening too.
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of people are trying to retire out of the Republican base too, because what they're doing, I think, is they're taking all they can get, like one last ditch effort before they run for the hills.
Yeah.
And they're going to leave us all in turmoil, you know, as they go.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, that kind of brings up another thing, which is the government shutdown, which started at 12:01 a.m. on Saturday morning. And, you know, this is a big deal. I mean, if you don't have funds for, you know, people to run federal programs across America, I mean, you're going to lose all kinds of services. Obviously, those people lose a paycheck. Or sorry about that. A little technical difficulty there, but we're back. So what were we talking about?
we were talking about Trump,
Oh yeah,
and we were talking about his cabinet
yeah, and the shutdown.
and the shutdown.
Yeah, yeah,
And we were talking about the sexual harassment, assaults, and molestation that he's been accused of, and
yeah. But I did want to talk about the shutdown though, real quickly
good,
here.
good, yeah.
So one of the issues that has come up is of course, you know, one of the largest, well, the largest federal agency that serves Native people, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and kind of its impact on the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Currently, Bureau of Indian Affairs has about a little over 4,000 employees, mostly Native American, and you know, they serve in all kinds of capacities across the country. You know, they help run tribal governments. Essentially, they do a lot of accounting for tribes. They're in law enforcement. You know, they're in child protective services, a lot of different areas. So anyway, the BIA does have a contingency plan for this shutdown. One of the things that the BIA is going to be doing is it's going to be keeping its law enforcement officers on the road. Obviously, that's very important. So officers will still have to report for duty. Child protective workers also will have to continue to work during the shutdown. Wildlife fire management that also will continue operating, as will irrigation and safety of dams. So those are the areas that are exempted, I guess, from the shutdown and won't be furloughed. So I mean, it's good to see that they'll continue to operate in some capacity. You know, another area that's going to be affected, of course, are national parks, and there are a number of national parks that serve Indian country. You know, there's things like Little Bighorn National Monument, and that, as I understand, they won't be able to keep their staff on board, but they'll be able to keep, you know, some of the basic services. They'll clean up the place, they'll clean up the restrooms, that sort of thing. A lot of those kinds of services are contracted anyway, so they can continue to pay for that because they're not funded directly through the federal government.
So everybody's basically just going home for unpaid holiday for a few days, huh?
Yeah, hopefully just a few days.
Hopefully, hopefully. You know, and the big hashtag. Okay, so the Republicans and Trump tried to make this a Democrat thing. You know,
Yeah.
like thanks Democrats for shutting down the government, but the big hashtag is Trump shuts down government. I don't know. I don't say the hashtag right. Maybe you can look it up to see the exact hashtag. But it's,
Was that really a hashtag you were trying to make just now?
no, yeah, it actually is worldwide. Like this is like
Yeah.
viral right now.
Okay.
It's like one of the hugest hashtags that they've had in history, and
The biggest hashtag.
that's what I said.
The best hashtag.
The best. He's the best. The biggest, best.
I have the best hashtags.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's on the same day. Like today's Trump's 1 year
Yeah.
anniversary. This is the day that the Women's March happened and the day that the shutdown happened. So everything, there's a lot of big stuff happening in the community right now. A lot for us to think about, you know. And then at the same time, you got Robert Mueller over here, like a bloodhound, you know,
Yeah.
hunting a big sow, you know, big wild sow out there, like just trucking through, smashing and defecating on all kind of different stuff out there
Gee.
in the environment.
Really going down the rabbit hole
Big
with this
orange-
analogy, man.
Big orange toupee wearing vile creature, and Robert Mueller is the bloodhound, like seeking him out right now. That's funny. That's my analogy, at least.
Yeah, well,
That's
your
all right, though.
analogy.
You
That's
know,
all right.
I mean, if anybody,
Doesn't have to be perfect.
if anybody in native country out there like supports Trump, contact me and let me know why.
Yeah, we'd like to hear from you. Actually, it's you know, I mean, we need that other side of the story as well. I mean, I have a friend who I went to high school with, who's my best man at my wedding, and he's very conservative. He's actually fairly pro-Trump, and I hear from him quite a bit, and he makes some interesting points. He certainly does, but a lot of his arguments are, well, he's better than Hillary, and I don't understand why we're still having this argument,
Yeah.
whether Trump is better than Hillary. I mean, Hillary's has nothing to do with what's going on.
I mean, it's
these
just
days.
denial, really.
Yeah.
It's just denial.
Yeah.
You know, it's like almost being abusive, you know.
Yeah.
And then blaming someone else, or you made me do it, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I ruined everything by voting for this guy, but you made me do it because Hillary would have been worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a lame excuse. But really, Hillary shouldn't be president either.
Yeah.
It should have been Bernie Sanders.
Should have been Bernie Sanders.
Bernie's got cheated. He got cheated by the DNC, and then Hillary got cheated by the biggest cheater.
Yeah.
And then the biggest cheater put Trump into office, and Robert Mueller's trying to connect that right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because you know, he's trying to say that Russia had nothing to do with him and or any of that, but now they have Steve Bannon. They have Steve Bannon. I don't know if you guys know who Steve Bannon is or what Breitbart is, but it's a racist outlet. Is that just online? Do they have TV?
I think so.
Do
Yeah.
they have TV networks? Or they're just online, huh?
I don't know.
It's
Yeah.
just a propaganda news media that's racist, and he's one of their head honchos who's now, they just axed him, they just fired him from Breitbart, which was his bread and butter, but
Because he was quoted in the Michael Wolff book.
With
you
the
know,
Michael Wolff
bad
book.
talking Trump,
Yeah.
basically.
was it Fire and Fury, the
Yeah.
book?
Mhm.
Yeah, so he's bad talking Trump and his son, saying his son's treasonous and this and that. So then Trump basically cast him out like completely. Like at first he just cut him loose, but he still had him on a string. But after that book came out, he completely casted him out, chastised him publicly, got him fired from Breitbart, or apparently got him fired from Breitbart. But now Robert Mueller is in contact with, he's got his claws in Steve Bannon.
I don't think Steve Bannon's going to roll.
He said he's going to cooperate completely today.
Well, that's one thing to say that. It's another thing to sit up before, Senate and or whoever, who's
Yeah.
talking to him. probably the Senate.
No, Robert Mueller.
Yeah.
The Senate tried to talk to him already. Congress tried to
Oh,
talk to
okay.
him, and he wouldn't talk to him.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
what's worrying them now.
Yeah.
They're really worried because he wouldn't talk to them. But if everything's crumbling around Trump right now, and they're only hanging on by a string, and they cast out this guy who's an egomaniac, you know, he's not too far. He doesn't fall too far from the Trump crazy tree. So, you know, he may be egotistical enough to just, you know, spill the beans on everything.
Yeah, possibly.
I'm surprised nobody gotten killed yet. Honestly, I'm surprised they're not out there doing.
Well, I
some
mean, how do you know nobody has?
spy on spy.
You know, there've been some questionable deaths in Russia. You know, among some of the people they think leaked some of this information, and you know, basically informed the U.S. government that the Russian government had in fact hacked, you know, the Democratic National Party servers and got this information, this leaked information about various emails that Hillary had that were kind of damning. I didn't think terribly, but somewhat damning. Just, you know, days before the election, that kind of swung the vote, they think. But a lot of these Russian informants that were giving us this information are now kind of disappearing, and so I think there have been deaths actually linked to this, but there may have been. Who knows what's going on here in the United States that we don't know about? It's, you know, I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist. I'd rather, you know, wait to see some facts before I start making allegations like that. But when there's this much at stake, I think it's fair to say that powerful people, especially powerful people with narcissistic tendencies, may end up going to some extremes to protect themselves. So that's something to keep an eye on. You know, I saw this movie this weekend, The Post, and it was really a good movie. You heard about that?
Yeah, I didn't see that one. It was good?
It was really good.
Oh man, yeah, I gotta go watch that
Yeah.
one. So, the House Intelligence Committee has released a full transcript of its interview with Glenn Simpson, the co-founder of opposition research firm Fusion GPS, the full transcripts. Okay, so they've been talking about it all over the news, right? But so I downloaded it and I started looking at it, and it does. It sounds just like a movie. You know, it sounds just like a spy novel.
Yeah.
What's been going on and how they tracked all this stuff, and you know, all the investigative reporting. Okay, so you got, on one hand, you got the FBI chasing down Trump and everything dirty about him, and the rest of the government that kind of just is they're set up like termites right now, just in there, just eating away at all the foundation of that's been set in place, you know. But then you also have these investigative reporters, and they're just like detectives.
Yeah, that's amazing how back and forth the Washington Post and the New York Times are right now. That's why I brought up the Post. That's a historical look at the Pentagon Papers. It was a study that was done by the U.S. government looking at the Vietnam War, and basically the fact that, you know, just all the underhanded things that the U.S. government had done to keep America at war, even though we were losing, and they knew we were losing. And so the New York Times broke the story, and then the Washington Post decided to, in the face of a court order saying that the New York Times had to desist from publishing these Pentagon Papers, the Post decided to stand up on behalf of the New York Times and also publish its own account, you know, using those same Pentagon Papers. And so they had this back and forth, and then other papers started jumping in, you know, across the country, publishing these Pentagon Papers. So the newspaper industry, the media was really kind of defending itself from this onslaught from, you know, the federal government that was trying to really shut down this free press. Nixon was not a champion of the free press. And so anyway, I mean, you hear these things, you watch these things, and you see so many parallels to what's going on right now. You know, you have a president who has called the free press, you know, an enemy of the people, and that should terrify anybody to hear that we have a president who's called our free press an enemy of the people. I mean, that's a rallying cry for every tyrant in the history of tyrants in this world. So that should be a huge red flag for anybody who's kind of looked in and researched and understands these historical sort of parallels that are taking place right now in our society. We're walking down a road right now. We're walking down a path that if we allow ourselves to go down much further, is going to lead us somewhere
Slippery slope.
very dark, very dark.
It's a slippery slope. They're trying to go back. They're trying to go back in time, really.
Yeah.
And that's what. Oh man, I forgot. What was the guy's name who was accused pedophile over in that election I just lost?
Is that
Roy Moore.
Roy Moore, yeah.
Yeah, that's what he kept talking about, is how America was the greatest back when slavery was.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah,
happening.
make America great again. I mean, let's be honest. That was code for, let's put white people back where they belong, right? On the top, on a pedestal.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, they haven't fallen too far from that already, but
yeah. But they fear they're slipping.
blatantly abuse
Yeah.
everyone else. That's starting to go away now, because the numbers are changing, and it's starting to change a lot of mainstream white America to actually empathize for other cultures and relate to them, and that's what they don't want.
Yeah.
And so that's why they use fear tactics, and you hear like these white sheep regurgitating this stupid criticism, this lateral suppression of people in their own pay scale, like, the people that are taking away from the country and the people that are draining the budget of the government are the people that are on welfare, or the people that collect Social Security, or the people, and it's garbage. It's such garbage, because those same people, if you ask them, what happened to that almost $9 trillion that the Pentagon can't account for, they won't say anything about it. They don't care. It's no big deal. Okay, but we, and not me, I'm not on government assistance, but we Americans that are at a certain pay grade, at a certain level, where some people are getting assistance, and it could be working, and it could be going to school. They're getting criticized, though, as draining the economy, but nobody's saying anything about all that missing money.
Yeah.
Which to me is such brainwash that I can't even understand it. I can't even make any excuse for people that think like that.
No.
Who can, And that's actually why I delete a lot of people off of Facebook that start talking to me about pro-Trump or or against this, or want to tell me about how we need to keep funding the military, and I'm like, well, the military isn't really funding the soldiers. The soldiers aren't coming out of the military and buying luxurious houses and doing great. They're coming out as veterans, all messed up, and they're half of our homeless population.
No.
I don't know if they're half, but they're a big percentage of that homeless population, and then you got everybody standing up for the national anthem, and if you don't, you get persecuted. They were playing it actually at the Women's March, like someone sang it, and my niece was out there, and I told her, I said, listen to the words. I said, this is about war. This is about some guy who's seeing rockets and bombs, and he looks up and he's keeping hope because he sees a flag. But it's all about war. It's the setting of war, and then promoting war, it isn't glamorous to me,
Yeah, as we're talking, I'm looking at your sign over there. You should put that in front of the camera here to show people.
Can I see it?
Yeah, there you go. So it says Trump Schnee, Ricketts Schnee, Oyate Na, Unchimaka Ohanhi.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
So Trump's no good, but
Go ahead, yeah.
you tell him.
Yeah, Trump's no good, Ricketts no good. Oyate na. What does that mean?
It's like Mother Earth, like we're all Mother Earth's people.
Yeah, okay.
Or we're all Mother Earth's nation.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't actually write the sign. Somebody else wrote the sign, and I was like, I'll carry it. And I had to explain it to a bunch of people, what it meant. So,
Yeah.
it depends on who wrote it, how they actually mean it, if this is nation or people.
Yeah.
But it's basically Trump's no good, Ricketts no good, and we're all Mother Earth's people.
Yeah.
If you reverse this,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, Ricketts is our governor, Pete Ricketts. Yeah, very cool.
Pete Ricketts has been referenced to Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
Because he kind of looks like Lex Luthor and
Acts like Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
Rich like Lex Luthor.
He seems cruel.
Goes after his enemies like Lex Luthor.
Yeah, and I heard rumors from people who have met him in person or have seen him speak in person that he's actually got this charm about him, but that he seems really like mean and toxic and heartless when it comes down to his true motives in life.
Yeah.
And so
He's an interesting guy. So there have been a number of Republican state senators here in Nebraska who don't always toe the party line. I mean, Nebraska's kind of known for its independent sort of political sort of stance that a lot of its leaders take, and we're proud of that, but oftentimes that means that the state senators aren't always, even if they're in the same party as the governor, aren't always on the side of the governor. So what Ricketts has started doing is he started funding opponents in the primaries, Republican opponents of these who he considers way too moderate Republicans, and gone after them that way, which I think is a really, I don't know, kind of a scary thing to see that our governor is going after his own party because they're not, Republican enough or conservative enough. That he doesn't want any sort of debate, any sort of division or any sort of other school of thought to have any sort of sway here. That worries me. So.
Yeah, I was trying to look up to see if he was a millionaire or a billionaire.
Pretty sure a billionaire. Yeah,
he was already really, really rich before he got into the government. He's basically a miniature copy of Trump, basically. He came into the government to enrich his own wealth, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know. But they also own a team, a controversial team. Which team do they own? Do you remember?
Is it the Cubs?
No, I don't think it's the Cubs. I think it's. Oh yeah, they do. I thought
Ameritrade, the Ricketts. Yeah.
I thought they owned a different team. I thought they owned a team with the Indian mascot.
Not that I know of. I mean. Yeah. Anyway, well, probably kind of winding down here, but I wanted to say something real quick. I had a friend in college. Her name was Jennifer Swiftbird, and a very kind woman. She was sober and had a daughter that she was raising, and my fiance, who's now my wife, her and I, and then my cousin who lived in Vermilion with her family, we would all get together and have game nights every once in a while in Vermilion, and it was a really beautiful escape. I got sober back in 98, I guess. I don't know, 1996, and so I went through about my last 2 years of college, in recovery, and so it was good to have that. I needed to separate myself from that other life that I knew and some of those people. Life. Yeah, I had to find some other way to live.
This guy was a heavy metal lead singer.
Say your prayers, little one.
I can't believe it. I couldn't believe it when he told me that. We were in a car coming from South Dakota, and he just busted out this song and started singing. And he's like belting it out. And I'm like, whoa, where's that coming from? It's pretty good, though.
Yeah. So this one of these friends that I had spent a lot of time with. Her name was Jennifer Swiftbird, and just a really wonderful person. And she's been a friend of ours for a long time. But I found out she passed away a couple days ago, and she was 50, and she left behind her daughter, a young woman named Francesca Swiftbird, who sadly is going to be getting married in October. She's engaged right now, and so it's I just wanted to say a few nice words about Jennifer. She was a really good person, and I really hated to hear that today. So anybody who knows her, I just wanted to send my condolences and my warmest wishes to you. And anyway.
Yeah. On that note, we love you all, and we hope you all can live a happy and successful life.
Yeah.
And we hope you keep listening, and we'll keep getting better as we go.
Yeah.
We're gonna make this more interactive. We're gonna make it more accessible. This is just the beginning.
Yeah.
So as things grow, they develop, and so this will as well. So thank you guys for listening.
All right.
And
thank you.
we'll see you next time.
See you later.